the controversy, the cast infighting, the tabloid headlines. Three's Company weathered it all, thanks in no small part to the late, great John Ritter, who carried the sitcom on his back during its final years. But one particular episode in the show's waning 6th season finally got Hollywood to take notice. An episode that even among Three's Company's 170 others, Ritter himself called the show's best. This is the fascinating and surprising backstory behind Up in the Air, next on Best Eps. Ah yes, physical comedy, the great lost art of television sitcoms. But even Lucille Ball once admitted, arguably few were better at it than John Ritter. Still, those first few seasons of Three's Company, while offering flashes of Ritter's gift, were always more about naughty bits, the jiggle factor, and those overheard misunderstandings. Still, when it premiered in March '77, that formula clicked with viewers enough that the sitcom found itself as the #1 comedy in America. But by 1980, America's tastes had changed. Jiggle TV was out, along with Suzanne Summers, and spectacle was in. So the producers of Three's Company decided to roll with the changes, leaning away from the jiggle and leaning into the physical. To that end, for season 3, they changed direction, literally, replacing their in-house director, Bill Hulban, with Dave Powers, a TV veteran who specialized in the slapstick, having helmed 10 seasons of The Carol Burnett Show. Powers had 4 Emmys on his shelf for his efforts, and knew exactly what he wanted to do with the show, shine a spotlight on John Ritter. "We could afford to lose the girls," Powers told the Simi Valley Star in 1982, "but without him, the show would fold." Powers even went so far as to rebuild the set, making it easier for those huge video cameras to pick up more of the action. After Powers was hired, he went to work, directing some of the show's most physical episodes, including Handcuffed, where Jack and Chrissy accidentally get locked arm in arm, Make Room for Daddy, where Jack gets into a fight with an ironing board, and Strangers in the Night, where Jack tries to serenade his girlfriend with disastrous results. But the show really leaned into its new direction starting in the season 4 farce A Camping We Will Go, remembers Martin Short. I always remember that scene where John was trying to get into a hammock. I just kind of stared in disbelief at all the ways he was making it completely real and throwing himself and twisting himself. Now, despite having a background in improv comedy, he actually studied with Robin Williams. John Ritter was meticulous about his physical comedy. Said Powers, he would never come out unless he knew what he was doing and where he was going to go with it. Given a rough draft of Camping, Ritter conferred with Powers and then had the hammock and crash pad set up in the studio shop, so he and Powers could spend a few hours perfecting exactly what pratfalls would look best on camera, which is why, according to Powers, Ritter made it look so spontaneous and accidental. Admitted Amy Yazbek, John was kind of an expert on the old-school comedy of Harold Lloyd and Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin. He absolutely adored it, and he copied some of it and stole some of it. A Camping We Will Go was a highlight of the show's 4th season, but John Ritter was just getting started. Now, when a show creeps into its later years, sometimes it has trouble finding fresh stories. Luckily for Three's Company, it had source material to draw from. The sitcom was based on the UK hit Man About the House, which ran for 39 episodes on ITV from 1973 to 76. So when conceiving the outline for what would become Up in the Air, the Three's Company writers circled back to a Man About the House episode called I Won't Dance, Don't Ask Me. They repurposed the basic premise. The UK's Chrissy invites Tripper to a fancy party, where he has to pretend he is someone else in order to make the handsome host jealous. The script assignment for Up in the Air went to staff writer Shelley Zellman, who actually went to Hollywood High School with John Ritter and was one of the few female comedy writers working in television during the early 80s. While Zellman revised the UK premise for Three's Company, at a certain point in the script, she simply wrote, Jack dances. When John Ritter read that, he beelined to Dave Powers with some concerns. Remembers Powers, John looked at the script and said, what do they want me to do here? Be Fred Astaire? I can't do all that. According to his then-wife Nancy, John was a wonderful dancer, only he didn't think he was. He had no confidence. So the idea that there would be a whole section of Jack dances kinda terrified him. As with camping, Ritter liked to prepare so that his comedy had the illusion of spontaneity. To that end, Powers decided Ritter needed some help, so he put a call out to dancer Don Crichton, with whom he'd worked on the Carol Burnett show. This is Don playing a soldier in Carol's famous Went with the Wind sketch. Don made an awful lot of people look good over the years, said Powers, who thought he could also do the same for John. But things did not start out swell. He had a lot of problems dancing, co-star Richard Kline told ABC in 2003. He had so much trouble with the choreography, he just had the damnedest time. But after a long weekend of late rehearsals, upstairs in their rented studio at CBS Television City, John slowly started to grow more comfortable. And he relaxed even further when Powers revealed that he would reuse the set design from Ritter's 1980 special Being of Sound Mind and Body. Said Powers, "My theory has always been, the easier you can make it on a performer, the better they're going to perform. The less they had to worry about the technicalities, the better they were going to be." Now familiar with the physicality, the choreography, and the new stage, as tape night approached on February 16, 1982, John Ritter was feeling more confident but still a little nervous, with perhaps good reason, because some critics had their claws out.
Tuesday.
Hi, honey, I'm home.
Joni and Chachi are house sitting, but it's no party on Happy Day. Then Shirley starts some trouble that just won't quit on Laverne and Shirley. And Jack gets down at the wildest party you've ever seen on Three's Company.
So the first act of Up in the Air takes place in the apartment. Janet has been invited to a party to an island off the coast, and Terri suggests she take Jack in order to make someone jealous. But Jack is terrified to fly, despite Larry's improv-like tutelage. So Larry gives him tranquilizers to calm his fear of being up in the air. At the start of Act 2, the black tie affair is in full swing. Janet and a loopy Jack arrive, and we learn that the apple of Janet's eye is none other than Greg Brady himself, Barry Williams. Problem number 1, Barry seems to have a wife who is attached to his hip. Problem number 2, Jack takes a gulp of an energy drink to wake up. And John Ritter is off to the races. For the next 4 minutes, John Ritter gets to pay homage to all of his comedic inspirations. The goofiness of Dick Van Dyke, the comic surprise of Charlie Chaplin, the creativity of Fred Astaire, the physicality of Donald O'Connor, the silliness of Jerry Lewis, and ending with Astaire's iconic grace. Everyone watching in the audience at CBS Television Studios that night was in awe, until Ritter came out for his final bow, and then they exploded.
John Ritter!
In 2021, writer Shelley Zellman told the amazing Ian Talks comedy podcast, "John was amazing, and we all just sat there with our mouths open watching him, because he was so good, so good." Incredibly, Ritter's dance was filmed almost entirely in one take, says Joyce Dewitt. Dave Powers directed as if it were a live stage play, with production stops only when absolutely unavoidable. So what you saw at home was actually very close to what the audience saw during our taping. Upon its airing on May the 4th, 1982, reviews for Up in the Air were unanimous that John Ritter was a comedy genius. Well, almost unanimous. Alan Weiner of the Everett Daily Herald called it, quote, more romper room than Comedy Hall of Fame, and TV writer John D. Miller of the South Bend Tribune took Three's Company to task in a lengthy piece that, while praising Ritter's talent, derided the show for glorifying drug and alcohol abuse. "It is totally inappropriate to make a drunk into a comic hero," Miller wrote. Still, critics be darned, many in the industry and fans began to slot Ritter into the same list of his comedy heroes, and Up in the Air clocked in an estimated 28 million viewers that week, landing Three's Company as the 5th most watched show in America. But perhaps more important than the ratings is the episode's legacy, especially amongst the cast. "It's one of the funniest episodes in all the years of Three's Company," thinks Richard Kline. Joyce Dewitt, too, thinks the episode is a classic, telling author Chris Mann in the excellent book Come and Knock on Our Door, "I thought John was so fabulous, that should go in the time capsule for physical humor at its very best." And guest star Barry Williams remembers going to see Ritter and Henry Winkler on Broadway in 2001 and seeing Ritter backstage after the show. Quote, "And John said, 'You know, Barry, I think of all the episodes that we did, the one that you were in with me was my favorite,' unquote." Today, Up in the Air is considered one of the best Three's Company episodes, if not the best. In 2001, it cracked TV Land's top 100 greatest episodes list and is today the highest rated Three's Company episode on IMDb with a 9.2 out of 10. But in an oversight I consider a crime against television, some streaming services today offer the episode with nearly half of Ritter's dance cut out. Another major oversight? The Emmys that year, which failed to nominate Ritter for this episode, but at least they made up for it. In 1984, even though Three's Company had already ended, Ritter's peers awarded him with the Emmy for Best Lead Performance in a Comedy.
John Ritter.
Incredibly, this was and is John Ritter's only Emmy win out of 10 lifetime nominations. But it's heartening to know that he was rewarded for his work on the show, if not for Up in the Air.
I'd like to thank Dave Powers, wonderful director.
Says Nancy Ritter, "When I went to the taping that night, I got to see a level of John as a performer that I hadn't seen before. One of those things that helps you fall in love with someone again is when you see them grab something out of you don't know where and just make magic.